look for a minute at this danger of war in Europe, looming war in Europe. The Kiev fascist madmen are on the march, and they're backed up, of course, every step of the way by the neocon fascist madmen here in Washington, D.C., as well as the humanitarian bombers, the Samantha Power and Kerry types, right, the Russophobes. So let's just take a look. To set the stage, you have to realize that Ukraine, under Poroshenko and under that rotten coalition government of Yatsenyuk, Yats the rats, as we call him, that is a failed state. That is collapsing. And the best index of that is the hryvnia, the Ukrainian monetary unit. The Ukrainian monetary unit a year ago, in the allegedly bad old days of Yanukovych, the hryvnia was holding steady at about 9 to a U.S. dollar. As of yesterday, that is to say Thursday, the 5th of February, the hryvnia collapsed by 34% in one day. Now, that's that currency war we told you about. Remember when the Swiss franc rocketed up 30% plus in a single day, in a couple of hours even? Well, this time it's the hryvnia, except it's not up, it's down, minus 34%. Now, that's an attack that can only be done using credit default swaps and other high-potency, high-destructive power derivatives. So that was yesterday. More than a third of the currency gone in a single day. What does it look like today? Not so good. Today, Friday, the 6th of February, down 9%. So it's getting up to almost, it's closing in on one half, 35% or so, 45% lost in 2 days. So when you have currency swings like that, you're dealing with a failed state. We'll get back to why this is. But the other side of it, the other very dramatic feature, is the pocket, the encirclement, right? The kessel, the sack around this place called Debaltseve. The siege of Debaltseve, Debaltsevo, really, in Russian, since that's really what it is, but Debaltseve in Ukrainian. This is a pocket where the Ukrainian army, I guess we can call it, plus fascists from the Ukrainian National Guard, right, the various fascist battalions, have been pocketed. They have been surrounded, right? This is like that Falaise pocket. This is going to turn into a killing field or a mass surrender soon enough. Since January 17th, it has been essentially cut off. And if you look at the map, it's a salient. It's a very long, thin salient of fascist-held territory jutting into the pro-Russian part of the country. And the Ukrainian army, the Poroshenko people, and Yatsenyuk, they have been desperate to hang on to this, right? 1 year after the coup that put the fascist clique into power in Kiev the 21st of February. So we're coming up on the first anniversary. And what's happening there is the key to everything else. Why do we have this unseemly rush? Kerry goes to Kiev to express his solidarity with the fascists. You know, I would have thought Kerry got enough fascism at home from his wife, right? Teresa Heinz Kerry, of course, herself comes out of Salazar fascism. The Salazar, Antonio Salazar, fascist dictator of Portugal for many decades. That's her background. But no, he's got to go and get fascism on the job, and that's Poroshenko and his friends in Kiev. And then we've had, on the same day, Merkel, the unfortunate Chancellor of Germany, and Hollande, the much buffeted President of France, were also visiting Poroshenko yesterday, the 5th of February. And then the two of them, Merkel and Hollande, have flown on to Moscow to meet with Putin. What are they really trying to do? They're desperately trying to save about 8 to 10,000 fascist soldateska loyal to Kiev from being wiped out in this pocket. It reminds me of the days when the Tamil Tigers turned out to be run from NATO and from Europe. When the Tamil Tigers were about to be wiped out, we had this parade of Miliband and others, Kushner, all the wonderful humanitarians suddenly discovered that the terror group had to be kept going. In this case, these strenuous exertions by Western diplomacy have everything to do with trying to save that spearhead of 10,000 fascist troops that have been surrounded, right? And it's beginning to look a bit like World War II on the ground, right? The Keil und Kessel, the armored spearheads and the attempt to surround and cut off these forces. So we don't know the results of the meetings here in the Kremlin with Putin. We simply know that there are some atmospherics. It doesn't look very cordial. But on the other hand, Merkel and Hollande have to come up with concessions because their side is getting slammed. Their side is getting clobbered on the ground. They're trying to get a ceasefire. Yeah, of course. Ceasefire to save those 10,000 fascists. Once they're gone, the entire Ukrainian military is also just about gone. So it's clear that there's a lot of tension. There are no glad handings, no grip and grin sessions for the photographers, 75-minute working dinner, one brief photo op. That was it. Hollande wants this to lead to a ceasefire. However, Steinmeier, the German foreign minister, social democrat, Steinmeier is very pessimistic. He says, we can't even say there's a chance to get a ceasefire. All we have is hope for a ceasefire. This is a bid to save Debaltseve. And Nuland, the fascist passionaria of the State Department, Nuland, the neocon, is saying that Ukraine right now is the battlefront for NATO and for the struggle of democracy. Unfortunately, this pedant, this militaristic pedant, Ashton Carter, it has told the hearings in the Senate that he wants to start bombing. He wants to start, not bombing, but sending the heavy weapons to the fascist forces. Bombing, I'm sure, comes later, but not right off the bat. We'll be back in just a second here on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, as we just mentioned, the Ukrainian monetary unit, the hryvnia, has fallen by almost 45% in 2 days. It is a failed state. The entire Kiev fascist clique is collapsing. There's nothing there. And therefore, we have Merkel, Hollande, Kerry running hither and yon to try to prop up this imperialist construction, this Staatsgebilde, right? This simulacrum of a state which is there. Steinmeier pessimistic. The neocons with Nuland freaking out. Ashton Carter. Obama, withdraw the name of Ashton Carter. Kick him out. Get him out of there. Get rid of him. That's a big favor to him to have that moment in the sun, but he blew it. So get him out of there. Now let's just look at the European pattern. Obama, under pressure from Susan Rice, another fascist passionaria. Susan Rice, I don't know whether she's a humanitarian bomber or a neocon. She's probably about 50-50. She's talking about sending sophisticated heavy-duty U.S. weapons to the Ukrainian fascists. That's a very bad idea because at this point, it's too late to save this salient. It won't make any difference. This is Stalingrad with the Ukrainian fascists being on the losing side. So if you sell them, if you give them these weapons, then what are they going to do? They're going to sell them to ISIS. They're going to sell them to Al-Qaeda. They're going to sell them to the highest bidder in the great arms bazaar of the Middle East, and they're not that far away, right? Across the Black Sea, sell them into Turkey, and Turkey will be glad to pass them on to whatever terror group is asking for them, right? You don't need even Javelin anti-tank missiles. Don't do it. Obama, back off. Back off. Not one GI, not one penny, not one dime for the Ukrainian fascist clique. All the more so is we just had the European defense ministers. And at this meeting yesterday, the European defense ministers are largely against it. They're against it. For example, Ursula von der Leyen, Leyen, she's the defense minister, Christian Democrat defense minister of Germany. No weapons, she says, nix weapons, only sanctions. The Dutch, that is Janine Hennis Plaschert, Plaschert, she also says no weapons, economic sanctions only. Refreshingly, the Italian defense minister, Roberto Pinotti, Pinotti, Pinotti also says no weapons, only sanctions. The British, with their usual weasel words, are trying to paper it over, trying to avoid a break, but there is no consensus. The European defense ministers essentially say no. And that's, I think, the beginning of great wisdom. And it's possible to imagine, with a little bit of work, that you could even go on and start taking down some of the sanctions, right? Germany, France, Italy, the big continentals, Hungary, Greece, Cyprus, others could easily join in shutting down this ridiculous economic blockade. This is now getting to be an existential threat to all of you. I don't want to be alarmist. I can't paint the Third World War on the wall every day of the week. But now this is getting very, very serious, very, very grim. We've got stupid Joe Biden, Motormouth Joe, shooting off his motormouth in Poland with that group of revanchists that are the Polish government, right? All hotheads, ready to fight to the last American, always, right? Ready to fight to the last American. That's the common denominator. And then, of course, the Lithuanian defense minister. Oh, yeah. They want all weapons. Again, ready to fight to the last American. Hagel, I think, waffles. I think he might want it, but he doesn't want to preempt Obama's decision. And we have this character, Breedlove. Breedlove. It sounds a little bit sordid. But the NATO commander, the guy who got the job when General Allen didn't, U.S. Air Force General Philip Breedlove says he doesn't come out and say send weapons to the fascists, but he says you should use all the tools in the tool bag. Well, that's not good enough. That's adventurism. Russia's ambassador to France, Alexander Orlov, says to Europe 1, French radio, there's an urgent need to avoid war. Quote, I would not say it's a last chance meeting, but it's not far off. Now look, are we in the dream time of July 1914? Just about a century after the fact? This dreamlike climate of unreality where you can't make it add up? I regard this now as an emergency. I would call, for example, on somebody like Professor Stephen Cohen and The Nation magazine of his wife, Katrina vanden Heuvel, at those Russian meetings that were the U.S.-Russian dialogue held in the Hart Senate office building last June. They were lamenting the fact that during the Cold War you had an organized peace lobby that could at least throw something into the scales against the warmongers. But that peace lobby has largely collapsed. Unfortunately, the neocon and humanitarian bomber war lobby, they're still there. And you don't know where they get their money, right? Is somebody in the Far East, like Beijing, are they interested in going to the top of the mountain and watching the tigers fight? I don't know. But the U.S.-Russian confrontation has no rhyme or reason. We repudiate it. We condemn it. It must be avoided at all costs. We cannot act as if Ukraine is an ally. Ukraine is not an ally. Ukraine has no obligations to the United States. This is a one-way street, all the more so. Ukraine has now received, they've already got $4.6 billion of a $17 billion line of credit for the IMF, right? They've been getting the tranches, but nevertheless, Ukraine is about to collapse. That would be, unless they get an immediate cash infusion of $15 billion. We say, not one penny for the Ukrainian fascists. Put that money into Greece, and I'll tell you later on how to do it. $15 billion could stabilize Greece for a year, more than a year. When their positive measures kick in, they'll increasingly not need it. But there's plenty to be done that's positive without looking to pick fights in the service of this bunch of Ukrainian hotheads. Notice also the pattern of military defeat. Debaltseve is pocketed. There's another pocket, Vuhlirsk, Vuhlirsk. That's a smaller pocket nearby. That one has been reduced. That's gone. All the fascist forces there have been done. Back in a minute. Welcome back. Crisis Radio. So the NATO defense ministers say no weapons for the Ukrainian fascists, right? Anybody in Europe with any brains wants to get 1,000,000 miles away from Poroshenko and his clique. And therefore Kerry runs in and Biden runs in and Susan Rice is deeply troubled. This is now insane. We've got to mobilize some kind of a credible counterweight. There's got to be a demonstration somewhere, somehow, sometime, be it in Washington or some mission in New York City, right, UN Plaza, whatever it is. Beware of these little Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Their stock in trade is they have significant Russian minorities in those countries, and they mistreat those people. They savagely deprive them of their normal civil rights and human rights. And then they turn around and they expect to have the U.S. come in again, fight for them to the last American. This is absolutely insane. This is no longer to be tolerated. It's a way that the United States is subsidizing the demagogy of these Russophobic scoundrel politicians like that crazy woman who runs Lithuania, right? All of these people, they have to go. They should fight their own battles. And if they don't want to fight battles, they should come to a modus vivendi with Russia. And that means Finlandization. Finlandization means they should not be in NATO. How in God's name did we ever get Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia in NATO? It's thanks to Clinton, I guess. And if not thanks to Clinton, then the process was continued and completed under Mad Dog Bush. So there's also stuff going on at Mariupol. As I said, Debaltseve is the current pocket that they're all running to try to save. Vuhlirsk pocket has been reduced. That's gone. And then we've got Mariupol, which is in the beginning phases of what will become a siege, I think. The fascist forces have largely brought this on themselves, right? Their incessant shelling of the pro-Russians across the ceasefire line is what has goaded the Russian side into this countermeasure. A couple of more things about General Breedlove, right? Philip Breedlove is now not the only military warmonger. We also have General Ben Hodges. Ben Hodges is the USARUR, United States Army commander. I guess it used to be in Heidelberg, now it's Wiesbaden. Anyway, this is the Condor Legion, right? Putin was talking about the Foreign Legion, fighting for the West, fighting for the NATO side in Ukraine. I'd call it the Condor Legion because this is all looking very much like the Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939, the dress rehearsal for World War II. Good God. And that was all done, right? The bombing of Guernica, right? That's sort of stuff that's going on now with the fascists shelling these towns, right? U.S. television will show you people getting killed. They won't tell you that it's the Kiev fascists that are doing most of that killing. So General Hodges is now, he wants to muscle in and get a piece of the action, right? He was on Rachel Madcow this week on MSNBC with his message of warmongering. And I don't know what's with Rachel Madcow, right? She got her career going based on being against the Iraq War, but now she's morphing into a quite a serious warmonger. So Hodges says that USAREUR, United States Army European Command, is going to be sending trainers in there. The United States Army will train 4 companies of the Ukrainian National Guard. Wait a minute, those are fascists. Those are fascist gutter snipes, scurrilous SS types, or SA types, sorry, the brown shirt type, right, the proles. That's who's in the Ukrainian National Guard, right? That's the right sector and these other crazy groups. So this is going to be called Rapid Trident 2015. It's going to happen in the area, the fascist stronghold of Lvov or Lviv or Lemberg, and that's coming up. All of this. Also, the U.S. is buying the Kozak. What's the Kozak? This sounds like Saturday Night Live. The Kozak is a Ukrainian armored car, and the U.S. is supposedly buying these things at about $200,000 a pop. Well, if you don't have any social services, and if the fascist Republicans want to cut your pension, then you know what's going on. All of this conflict, by the way, is already, as I speak to you, on display in Munich for that famous yearly Munich Security Conference. Remember, in January it's Davos, and in February it's nearby Munich, and that's the Wehrkunde, right? That's the old Wehrkunde. You remember I once clashed with the founder of that, this guy Kleist, from a well-known German family, been around quite a while. And Kleist got angry with me because I told him Dan Quayle was a moron, and somehow he was scandalized by that and would never talk to me. Well, I'm sorry, Dan Quayle was a moron. Von Kleist is no longer with us, but his misleadership is continuing. We did have some skepticism on the fascist forces coming from CBS News, right? That the fascist forces, although they don't call them that, are not getting supplies. They don't get clear orders, and there's a lot of resentment, right? I think we're up to the 4th attempt by levée en masse, right? The mass recruitment of fighters into those forces, but a lot of people are running away. They just don't want them. And we also have interesting confusion on the Ukrainian side, right? What's the propaganda line? A general in the Ukrainian army said this week, we are not fighting Russian regular units, but Yatsenyuk then came on and said, the only thing we're fighting are Russian regular units, right? There are no Ukrainians on the other side. All right. Now, the other principal task of today, beyond calling for a mass mobilization and on social media, start it on social media and take it elsewhere as far as you can. U.S. butt out of Ukraine. Ukraine is the Russian sphere. We've had enough. We're sick of war. We don't trust this leadership. Don't trust Obama, Biden, Kerry. They're all discredited. They're all incompetent. We're not going to be led into war by a bunch of losers. And that goes double for the Republicans. Republicans, in the meantime, have revealed themselves to be the classic warmongers that they always were.